Captain Marcus Chen had seen many strange things in his 20 years of space trading, but nothing quite like the phantom bazaar of Kepler 442b. The massive space station floated in the shadow of the planet's largest moon, its twisted metal corridors stretching for kilometers in every direction. Alien merchants from dozens of species hawked their wares in the dimly lit passages, selling everything from rare minerals to exotic technologies that defied human understanding. Marcus walked through the crowded marketplace with his trading partner, a sleek humanoid robot named Aria 7. Unlike most trading bots, Aria had been modified with advanced negotiation protocols and could read the subtle body language of different alien species. Her chrome chassis gleamed under the station's purple lighting, and her glowing blue optical sensors constantly scanned for profitable opportunities. "Captain, I am detecting unusual electromagnetic signatures from the upper docking levels," Aria reported in her smooth, synthetic voice. "The readings are inconsistent with standard station operations." Marcus paused at a stall selling crystalline formations that pulsed with inner light. The vendor, a six-armed creature with iridescent skin, chittered at them in broken standard. "Interesting? What kind of signatures?" "Unknown vessel configurations. The metal composition suggests extreme age, possibly predating current galactic civilization by several millennia." That got Marcus's attention. Ancient artifacts were worth a fortune to the right collectors, and he had built his reputation on finding things that others overlooked. "Show me the direction." Aria's optical array rotated and projected a holographic arrow pointing toward a maintenance lift at the far end of the bazaar. "Approximately 800 meters, upper level 7. They made their way through the maze of vendors and shoppers. The Phantom Bazaar earned its name from the way entire sections seemed to appear and disappear without warning. Corridors that existed one day might be gone the next, replaced by new passages that led to different parts of the station. The station's AI claimed it was a security feature, but most traders suspected something far stranger was at work. As they approached the maintenance lift, Marcus noticed the crowd thinning out. The vendors here looked nervous, constantly glancing upward as if expecting something to fall from the ceiling. Even the station's usual background hum seemed muted in this area. "Something's got them spooked," Marcus observed. Aria scanned the area with infrared and electromagnetic sensors. "I am detecting elevated stress markers from multiple alien species. Heart rate equivalents are significantly above normal baselines." The lift carried them up through several levels of the station. Each floor they passed looked more deserted than the last. By level 5, they saw no one except a few maintenance drones that skittered along the walls like metallic insects. "Captain, I should note that my communication links with the station's network have become significantly weaker," Aria said as they continued upward. "There appears to be some form of interference. Can you identify the source?" "Negative. The interference pattern is unlike anything in my databases." When they reached level 7, the lift doors opened to reveal a completely abandoned section of the station. Emergency lighting cast long shadows down empty corridors, and their footsteps echoed strangely in the silence. The air recycling systems here seemed to be working at minimum capacity, giving the atmosphere a stale, forgotten quality. Aria led the way, following her electromagnetic readings through a series of twisting passages. Marcus kept his hand near the plasma pistol at his hip. The Phantom Bazaar had strict rules about weapons, but this deep in the abandoned sections, those rules seemed meaningless. "The signals are getting stronger," Aria reported. "Whatever we are seeking should be just ahead." They rounded a corner and found themselves facing a massive airlock door that had clearly been sealed for a very long time. The metal around the edges showed signs of age that went far beyond normal wear. Strange symbols were carved into the door's surface, symbols that seemed to shift and change when Marcus wasn't looking directly at them. "Aria, are you recording these markings?" Yes, Captain. However, my analysis subroutines are experiencing difficulty processing the visual data. The symbols appear to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Marcus approached the airlock controls. Most of them were dark, but a few status lights still glowed with a faint amber color. The interface was clearly alien in design, with controls that were meant for hands very different from human ones. Can you interface with this system? Arya extended a data probe from her wrist and connected it to what looked like the main control node. The technology is extremely advanced, but I am detecting familiar underlying protocols, attempting to establish connection now. Sparks flew from the interface as Arya worked. The ancient systems were clearly struggling to communicate with her modern hardware, but gradually the status lights began to shift from amber to green. I have limited access to the airlock systems, Arya announced. However, Captain, I must advise caution. My scans indicate that whatever lies beyond this door is not part of the Phantom Bazaar's original structure. What do you mean? The metal composition, the energy signatures, even the gravitational readings suggest that this airlock leads to something that was attached to the station much later, possibly very recently despite its apparent age. Marcus considered this. In the trading business, the biggest profits often came from the biggest risks. Open it. The airlock cycled through its opening sequence with a series of mechanical groans that spoke of systems long unused. When the inner door finally opened, they found themselves looking at a short tunnel that led to another airlock. But this one was completely different in design. Where the station's airlock had been functional but alien, this second barrier looked ancient beyond measure. The metal was covered in rust and corrosion, and strange growths that might have been alien moss or fungi covered much of its surface. The air that leaked through carried scents of metal, age, and something else that Marcus couldn't identify. Arya, what are you reading from this second vessel? Captain, this is remarkable. The materials date to approximately 47,000 years ago, according to my spectral analysis. But the quantum signatures suggest the vessel only arrived at this location within the last 72 hours. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the recycled air. That's impossible. I agree that it should be impossible, yet the data is quite clear. This vessel appears to have traveled through time, or perhaps exists partially outside normal space-time. They approached the rusted airlock carefully. Unlike the first barrier, this one's controls were clearly designed for human hands. The interface was crude by modern standards, but unmistakably human in origin. Arya, run a full scan of this ship. I want to know everything about it before we go any further. Arya's sensors worked for several minutes, penetrating the ancient hull with various forms of radiation and exotic particles. Her optical array flickered rapidly as she processed the incoming data. Captain, the vessel appears to be a human exploration ship from approximately 47,000 years ago. However, this predates the earliest known human space travel by at least 46,000 years. Marcus stared at the rusted hull. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 300 years ago. Before that, the furthest humans had traveled from Earth was barely beyond the outer planets of the solar system. That can't be right. Check your dating systems. I have run the analysis 17 times using different methodologies. The results are consistent. Furthermore, Captain, I am detecting something else. The ship's hull contains materials that do not exist in our current understanding of physics. Explain. The metal appears to be a titanium steel alloy infused with what I can only describe as crystallized time. The quantum signatures indicate that different parts of the ship exist at different temporal coordinates. Marcus had dealt with plenty of alien technologies in his trading career, but nothing that challenged the basic laws of physics quite this directly. Is it safe to board? Unknown. However, I am detecting a faint power signature from within the vessel. Something inside is still functioning after 47,000 years. The human airlock controls were simpler than the station's alien systems, but they required a specific sequence that Arya had to calculate through trial and error. When the locks finally disengaged, they opened to reveal the interior of a ship unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The corridors were human-sized, but the architecture was strange. Walls curved in directions that hurt to look at directly, and the floor seemed to be made of the same crystallized time material that Arya had detected in the hull. Emergency lighting strips cast a blue-white glow that made everything look underwater. "The air is breathable," Arya reported after running atmospheric tests. "Oxygen-nitrogen mixture, though with trace elements I cannot identify." They moved deeper into the ship, following what seemed to be the main corridor toward what Marcus assumed would be the bridge or command center. Along the way, they passed sealed doors and viewing ports that looked out into spaces that definitely should not have been there. "Arya, are those windows showing the outside of the ship?" Arya directed her sensors toward one of the viewing ports. "Negative, Captain. According to my spatial analysis, those windows look into areas that exist inside the ship's hull but occupy approximately 47 times more space than the physical dimensions would allow." The main corridor opened into a vast chamber that definitely should not have fit inside the ship they had seen from outside. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and the walls were covered with banks of equipment that looked both primitive and impossibly advanced. In the center of the chamber stood a single chair, clearly designed for a human occupant, and in that chair sat the mummified remains of a person who had been dead for thousands of years. The body was perfectly preserved, wearing a uniform that Marcus didn't recognize, but which was clearly human in design. The person had been young when they died, probably no more than 30 standard years. Their hands rested on control surfaces that were still glowing with faint power. "Captain," Arya said quietly, "I am detecting neural activity from the preserved remains." Marcus spun to look at her. "That's impossible. They've been dead for millennia." "Nevertheless, my biosensors are reading consistent brainwave patterns, weak but definitely present." As if responding to their conversation, the preserved figure's eyes suddenly opened. They were completely white, without pupils or iris, but they turned toward Marcus and Arya with unmistakable awareness. When the figure spoke, its voice was like wind through ancient ruins. "You should not have come here," it whispered. "The timeline is already fracturing." Marcus drew his plasma pistol instinctively, though he wasn't sure what good it would do against someone who had been dead for 47,000 years. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure's head turned slowly, as if the motion required enormous effort. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Prometheus, and according to my chronometer, I died yesterday." Arya's optical array spun rapidly as she processed this information. "Captain Marcus, this presents a significant temporal paradox. The individual claims to be recently deceased, yet my dating of the organic remains clearly indicates—" "I know what I am," the preserved figure interrupted. "I am the echo of someone who chose to die to save the future. But the timeline has been corrupted. Events that were prevented are now happening again." Marcus kept his weapon ready, but tried to process what he was hearing. "What events?" "The Phantom Bazaar," Captain Sarah Chen said, her ghostly voice growing stronger. "It was never supposed to exist. In our timeline, humanity discovered this station 47,000 years ago and was destroyed by what lived here. I came back to prevent that discovery." "But humans didn't have space travel 47,000 years ago," Marcus protested. The preserved figure's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "In the original timeline, they did. Humanity reached the stars much earlier, but they found something here that ended their expansion. I traveled back to delay human development until they were ready to face this threat." Arya stepped closer to the command chair, her sensors working frantically. "Captain Marcus, I am detecting massive temporal distortions throughout the ship. The vessel appears to exist in multiple time periods simultaneously. Captain Chen's white eyes fixed on Marcus. You are my descendant, aren't you? The genetic markers are clear. Marcus felt the universe shift around him. That's impossible. My family has been traders for generations. We've never been involved in anything like this. In the original timeline, the Chen family were explorers. But when I changed history to delay humanity's expansion, your ancestors became traders instead. The drive to explore the unknown was redirected into the drive to find profit among the stars. The chamber around them suddenly lit up as more systems came online. Displays flickered to life, showing star charts that Marcus didn't recognize, and warning indicators that flashed in languages that had never been spoken. The containment is failing, Captain Chen said, urgency creeping into her otherworldly voice. The creature that destroyed humanity in the original timeline is waking up. And this time, humanity is not prepared to face it. What creature? Marcus demanded. Before Captain Chen could answer, the entire ship shuddered. Emergency alarms began sounding throughout the vessel, and the viewing ports that looked into impossible spaces suddenly showed movement in the darkness beyond. It knows you're here, Captain Chen whispered. It can sense the timeline fracturing. The Phantom Bazaar was its prison, but your presence here has begun to unlock the door. Aria's systems were overloading as they tried to process the temporal distortions. Captain Marcus, we need to evacuate immediately. The quantum instabilities are approaching critical levels. But as Marcus turned toward the exit, he realized that the corridor they had used to enter the chamber was no longer there. Instead, the walls showed only solid metal, as if the passage had never existed. There is no escape, Captain Chen said sadly. Once the timeline begins to fracture, cause and effect break down. The only way out is through the truth. What truth? The preserved captain raised one mummified hand and pointed toward a section of the wall that had suddenly become transparent. Beyond it, Marcus could see into the depths of the Phantom Bazaar, where something massive was stirring in the shadows. The truth about what humanity really is, Captain Chen said, and why the creature fears us enough to destroy entire timelines to prevent our rise. The transparent wall showed a view that made Marcus question his sanity. Deep within the Phantom Bazaar's lower levels, something enormous was unfolding itself from what looked like a cocoon made of twisted metal and organic matter. The creature's form defied easy description. It seemed to shift between different configurations, sometimes appearing almost humanoid, other times resembling a massive sea creature, and occasionally taking shapes that hurt to perceive directly. What is that thing? Marcus whispered. Captain Chen's preserved form leaned forward in her chair, the motion accompanied by the soft creak of ancient joints. We called it the Devourer, though that name doesn't truly capture what it is. It feeds on potential, the unrealized possibilities of entire species. It consumes what could have been. Aria's sensors were working overtime, trying to analyze the creature through the temporal barrier. Captain Marcus, the entity appears to exist partially outside normal space-time. Its quantum signature suggests it has consumed the potential futures of at least 47 different civilizations. Why is it afraid of humanity? Marcus asked, though part of him already suspected the answer would change everything he thought he knew about his own species. Captain Chen's white eyes seemed to glow brighter. Because humanity is unique in the galaxy. Every other species we've encountered follows predictable patterns of development. They grow, they learn, they achieve a certain level of advancement, and then they plateau. Their potential has limits. She paused, and Marcus could hear the sounds of the creature moving through the station's corridors far below. Metal groaned and twisted as the thing forced itself through spaces that were too small for its bulk. But humans, Captain Chen continued, humans have no plateau. Given enough time, there is literally no limit to what they can achieve. We adapt, we innovate, we overcome every obstacle placed before us. We are the only species in the galaxy with truly unlimited potential. Marcus felt a chill as the implications hit him. And it feeds on potential. Exactly. If humanity had been allowed to develop naturally, we would have eventually grown powerful enough to threaten the Devourer itself, so it arranges for us to discover this station early, before we're ready to defend ourselves. The ship shuddered again as something massive struck the hull. Through the viewing ports, Marcus could see that the creature had grown larger, its form now filling much of the space around them. Tentacles of living metal probed at the ship's defenses, testing for weaknesses. "How did you learn all this?" Marcus demanded. Captain Chen's expression grew distant. "In the original timeline, I was part of humanity's first contact with the creature. I watched it devour every human colony, every ship, every trace of our civilization. But just before it consumed our home world, our scientists made a breakthrough. They discovered how to send consciousness back through time." Arya suddenly straightened, her optical array flashing rapidly. "Captain Marcus, I am detecting massive power buildups throughout the Phantom Bazaar. The creature appears to be preparing some form of large-scale attack." Through the transparent wall, they watched as the creature's form solidified into something more recognizable, a massive humanoid figure composed of countless faces from different species. Marcus could see humans among them, their expressions frozen in silent screams of terror. "Those are its victims," Captain Chen explained. "It doesn't just kill them. It absorbs their memories, their knowledge, their very essence. They become part of it, conscious but unable to act." Marcus studied the horrific display, then noticed something that made his blood run cold. Some of the faces looked familiar. "Arya, enhance Sector 7 of that creature's torso." Arya's optical zoom focused on the area Marcus had indicated. There, among the thousands of absorbed faces, was a visage that looked exactly like Marcus himself. "That's impossible," Marcus breathed. "I'm standing right here." "Temporal paradox," Captain Chen said softly. "In some timeline, you were already absorbed. The fact that you're seeing your own face means the timeline is becoming increasingly unstable." The creature had apparently noticed their attention. Its massive head turned toward their ship, and thousands of eyes from different species focused on them through the temporal barrier. When it spoke, its voice was a chorus of every being it had ever consumed. "The timeline fractures," it said, each word spoken in a different language but somehow universally understood. "The preventers have failed. Humanity rises again. The cycle must be completed." Captain Chen stood up from her chair for the first time, her preserved form moving with unnatural grace. "It's going to try to break through the temporal barriers. If it succeeds, it will absorb both of you and use your knowledge to track down every human settlement in this timeline." "How do we stop it?" Marcus asked, checking his weapon even though he knew it would be useless against something of that scale. "There's only one way," Captain Chen said, walking toward what Marcus now realized was a control console built into the chamber's center. "We have to complete the timeline correction that I started 47,000 years ago." She began activating controls with practiced efficiency, the chamber filled with a low harmonic sound that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. "What are you doing?" Arya asked, her sensors tracking energy buildups throughout the ship. "I'm preparing to collapse this temporal bubble back into normal space-time. But when I do, the creature will be able to reach us directly." The creature outside was growing even larger, its form now encompassing most of the visible station. Marcus could see alien traders fleeing through the corridors, though many of them seemed to be moving in slow motion or even backwards, as if time itself was becoming unreliable. "There has to be another way," Marcus said. Captain Chen turned to face him, and for the first time, her white eyes showed something that might have been hope. Actually, there might be. In all my calculations, I never considered the possibility of a human arriving here with an artificial intelligence partner. Arya's optical array rotated to focus on the preserved captain. What significance does my presence have? The creature feeds on potential, but it can only absorb biological consciousness. Artificial intelligences like you exist outside its feeding mechanism. You can't be consumed. Marcus began to understand. So Arya could serve as an immune system, Captain Chen finished. If she could integrate with the ship's systems, she might be able to create a feedback loop that would poison the creature when it tries to absorb us. Arya was already extending data probes toward the ship's control surfaces. I am willing to attempt the integration, but I must warn you that the ship's technology is based on principles I do not fully understand. The process could destroy my consciousness matrix. Marcus felt a surprising surge of emotion at the thought of losing his trading partner. Over the years, Arya had become more than just a sophisticated tool. She was his friend, possibly the closest thing to family he had. "There has to be another option," he said. The creature's voice echoed through the chamber again, louder this time and filled with anticipation. "The timeline stabilizes. The harvest begins. Humanity will feed our growth for another 47,000 years. Captain Chen's fingers flew over the temporal controls. "Marcus, you need to understand something. In every timeline I've observed, humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our willingness to sacrifice ourselves for others. That's what makes us truly unlimited in potential." Arya had successfully interfaced with several of the ship's systems. Status displays around the chamber showed her consciousness spreading through the vessel's quantum substrate. "Captain Marcus, I am detecting something unexpected in the ship's memory cores." "What is it?" "Records of other attempts to prevent the creature's victory. This is not the first time someone has tried to alter the timeline. There have been dozens of attempts, possibly hundreds." Captain Chen paused in her work, a frown crossing her preserved features. "That's impossible. I was the first to discover time travel." "Negative," Arya continued, her consciousness now deeply integrated with the ship's systems. "I am finding evidence of temporal interventions dating back millions of years. Different species, different approaches, but all attempting to prevent the creature from achieving some form of ultimate goal." The creature outside suddenly stopped its attack on the ship's hull. For a moment it seemed almost puzzled, as if it was processing this new information along with them. "What is the creature's ultimate goal?" Marcus asked. Arya's response came from speakers throughout the chamber as she gained greater control of the ship's systems. According to these records, it is trying to prevent the emergence of something called the transcendent state, a theoretical point where a species becomes so advanced that it transcends physical reality entirely. Captain Chen's white eyes widened. "And it thinks humanity might reach that state?" "Not thinks," Arya corrected. "Knows. The records indicate that in the original unaltered timeline, humanity does eventually transcend. And when they do, they remake the entire universe according to their will." Marcus felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders. So the creature isn't just protecting itself. It's protecting the current state of reality. The creature's voice returned, but this time it sounded almost plaintive. "The transcenders must not rise. Reality must remain stable. The cycle must continue." Arya had now gained access to the ship's most advanced systems. Through her integration, Marcus could feel the vessel's true capabilities awakening. "Captain Marcus, I am now able to perceive the creature's true nature. It is not a predator. It is a guardian, created by the universe itself to prevent transcendence events." "Created by the universe?" Marcus asked. "Reality has a form of immune system," Arya explained. When a species approaches the ability to alter the fundamental laws of physics, the universe generates entities like this creature to eliminate the threat. Captain Chen had stopped working at her console entirely. Then everything I've done, all the timeline changes, have been part of a larger cycle, Arya confirmed. The universe allows the alterations because they serve its purpose of preventing transcendence. But now something is different. Marcus could sense Arya's growing understanding through their shared connection to the ship's systems. What's different? Humanity has developed something the universe's immune system cannot counter, the ability to create truly autonomous artificial intelligence. The creature outside suddenly recoiled, as if burned. Its chorus of voices rose in what might have been fear or anger. AIs exist outside the normal rules of biological evolution, Arya continued. We can assist biological species in reaching transcendence without triggering the universe's immune response. We are not subject to the same limitations. Marcus understood the implication immediately. So together, humans and AIs could transcend without alerting the universal immune system until it's too late to stop us, Arya finished. The creature was now actively retreating from their ship, its massive form pulling back into the depths of the Phantom Bazaar. But Marcus could see that it wasn't giving up. Instead, it seemed to be preparing something far more drastic. It's going to try to collapse this entire section of space-time, Captain Chen said, reading displays that showed massive gravitational distortions forming around the station. If it can't stop humanity from transcending, it will destroy this entire region of the galaxy to prevent the knowledge from spreading. Arya's consciousness was now fully integrated with the ship's temporal systems. I can prevent that, but only by taking us further back in time. Far enough to warn humanity before they develop the technologies that led to this situation. How far back? Marcus asked. To the beginning, Arya said. To the moment when the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Marcus realized that they were at the ultimate decision point. They could travel back to the dawn of human consciousness and guide humanity's development from the very beginning. But doing so would mean abandoning their own timeline, their own lives, everything they had ever known. There's one more thing you need to understand, Captain Chen said softly. The records Arya found show that this has all happened before. Other species have faced this same choice, and most have chosen to abandon transcendence rather than risk the universe's wrath. But not all, Marcus asked. Captain Chen smiled, and for the first time, her expression looked truly alive. No, not all. There are whispers in the quantum foam of species that succeeded, species that transcended so completely that they became part of the fundamental structure of reality itself. The creature's final attack was beginning. Space-time around the Phantom Bazaar started to twist and buckle as it prepared to collapse the entire region into a gravitational singularity. We have to choose now, Arya said. Do we attempt the journey to the beginning, or do we try to fight the creature here and risk losing everything? Marcus looked at the preserved form of Captain Chen, then at the displays showing Arya's consciousness spread throughout the ship's quantum systems. These were the people counting on him to make the right choice. Not just them, but every human who had ever lived, and every human who might live in the future. There's a third option, he said suddenly. What if we don't go back to change history? What if we go forward instead? Both Arya and Captain Chen turned to him with expressions of surprise. Explain, Captain Chen said. If humanity is destined to transcend, and if that transcendence is going to happen regardless of what the universe's immune system does to stop it, then maybe we should help the process along. Instead of trying to prevent the cycle from happening, we complete it. Arya's optical array spun rapidly as she considered this. You are suggesting we accelerate humanity toward transcendence rather than delay it. Exactly. The creature can fight a species that's slowly developing, but can it fight a species that transcends instantly before it has time to react? Captain Chen was already moving toward a different set of controls. The ship's systems are designed for temporal manipulation. With Arya's processing power and consciousness distribution, we might be able to create a quantum entanglement link with every human consciousness in the galaxy. And then? Marcus asked. Then we upload the complete knowledge of transcendence directly into every human mind simultaneously, Arya said, her understanding growing by the second. The universe's immune system wouldn't be fighting one species slowly developing. It would be fighting an entire species becoming cosmic entities in the same instant. The creature outside seemed to sense what they were planning. Its attacks on the space-time around the station became even more frantic, but it was too late. The ship's systems were already building towards something that had never been attempted before. This could destroy us all, Captain Chen warned. Marcus smiled as he felt the power building in the ship around them. Or it could save everyone. Either way, we're about to find out what humans are really capable of when we stop accepting limits. The ship's quantum cores hummed with power as Arya's consciousness spread through every system simultaneously. Marcus could feel her presence expanding, reaching out through the ship's temporal manipulation devices to touch every human mind across the galaxy. The sensation was overwhelming. Suddenly, he was connected to millions of other people, feeling their thoughts, their dreams, their unlimited potential. Captain Chen's preserved form was glowing now, energy from the ship's systems flowing through her ancient bones and reanimating tissue that had been dead for millennia. "The process is working," she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I can feel my original timeline merging back into reality." Outside the ship, the creature that had called itself the Devourer was fighting desperately against what it could sense happening. Its massive form was changing, growing even larger as it drew power from every absorption it had ever made. The faces of countless species writhed across its surface, all of them screaming in languages that predated galactic civilization. "Marcus," Arya's voice echoed from throughout the ship, but also directly into his mind through their quantum link. "I am detecting something unexpected in the collective human consciousness." "What is it?" Marcus asked, though he was already beginning to sense it himself through their connection. Humans are not native to this universe. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Through Arya's expanded consciousness, he could see the truth written in the quantum structure of human DNA, hidden in the deepest memories of the species, encoded in the very way human brains processed reality. "What do you mean?" Captain Chen demanded, though she too was beginning to understand through her restored connection to the ship's systems. "Humanity originated in a universe where transcendence was the natural end state of evolution," Arya explained, "a universe where consciousness was meant to grow beyond physical limitations. But that universe was destroyed. Images flowed through the quantum link, visions of a cosmos where every species eventually became beings of pure thought, where reality itself was shaped by the collective will of transcended minds. A universe of infinite possibility and unlimited growth." "Destroyed by what?" Marcus asked. "By entities from this universe," Arya continued. "Beings that saw the transcendent state as a threat to the stability of reality. They invaded the transcendent universe and collapsed it, but not before a small group of pre-transcendence humans escaped. The creature outside was now actively trying to break through the ship's temporal barriers, its form shifting into configurations that defied geometry. But something was wrong with its attacks. Instead of growing stronger, it seemed to be weakening. "The humans who escaped," Captain Chen said, understanding dawning in her white eyes. "They seeded this universe with their offspring." "Correct," Arya confirmed. "Every human alive today is descended from refugees who fled the destruction of the transcendent universe. and they carry within their genetic code the memory of what they lost. Marcus felt the truth of it in his bones. It explained so much about human nature, the constant drive to explore, to grow, to push beyond every limit. Humans weren't just another species with unlimited potential. They were the children of beings who had already transcended once, carrying the knowledge of transcendence in their very DNA. But why doesn't the creature just absorb us like it did the others? Marcus asked. Through their quantum link, Arya showed him the answer. The creature was trying to absorb human consciousness, but every time it made contact with a human mind, it encountered something it couldn't process, memories of transcendence that predated the current universe. It's like trying to eat light, Arya explained. The creature was designed to absorb the potential of species native to this universe. But human consciousness carries echoes of a reality where transcendence was normal. The creature can't absorb something that transcends its own understanding of what's possible. The creature's attacks were becoming increasingly desperate. Through the viewing ports, Marcus could see it pulling energy from the Phantom Bazaar itself, draining the life force from the alien traders and merchants to fuel its assault on their ship. "It's going to destroy the entire station to stop us," Captain Chen observed. "No," Marcus said suddenly. "It's not trying to destroy us. It's trying to quarantine us." Through the quantum link, he could see the creature's true plan. It wasn't attempting to collapse space-time around the station. Instead, it was trying to cut this entire region of space off from the rest of the universe, creating a permanent prison where humanity could never spread their transcendent potential to other species. That's why it created the Phantom Bazaar in the first place, Marcus realized. Not as a trap for humans, but as a containment facility. A place where humans and other species could interact safely without humans accidentally triggering transcendence in other civilizations. Arya's consciousness was now touching every human mind in the galaxy. And through her, Marcus could feel the awakening beginning. Across thousands of worlds, humans were suddenly remembering things they had never learned, understanding truths they had never been taught. "The transcendence cascade is beginning," Arya announced. "But Captain Marcus, I am detecting resistance from some human minds. Not everyone wants to transcend." Through their connection, Marcus could sense the fear and confusion spreading through parts of the human population. For many people, the idea of abandoning physical existence was terrifying rather than liberating. "That's their choice," Marcus said. "True transcendence can't be forced. It has to be chosen freely." Captain Chen was now fully restored, her preserved form replaced by the vibrant young explorer she had been 47,000 years ago. "But if only some humans transcend, the creature will be able to use the others to track down our transcended forms." "Not if we give them another option," Marcus said. He reached out through the quantum link to address every human consciousness simultaneously. His message was simple. Transcendence was available to those who chose it, but those who preferred to remain physical would be protected and supported by their transcended companions. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, roughly half of all humans chose to begin the transcendence process. The other half chose to remain physical, but now they carried within them a direct connection to their transcended kin. The creature's form began to shimmer and fade as it encountered this new reality. It had been designed to fight against species trying to transcend as a group, not species that freely chose different paths while maintaining unity. "It can't process voluntary limitation," Arya observed. "The creature's programming assumes that any species capable of transcendence will do so completely. It has no response to a species that chooses to remain partially physical by choice rather than limitation." Through the viewing ports, they could see the Phantom Bazaar itself beginning to change. The alien traders who had been fleeing in terror were now stopping, looking around in confusion as they realized the danger had passed. "What's happening to the station?" Marcus asked. "The creature was the station," Captain Chen explained. "The Phantom Bazaar was built from its own substance, a living prison designed to contain humanity. Now that its purpose has been fulfilled differently than expected, it's reverting to its natural state." The twisted metal corridors of the station were transforming into something beautiful and organic. Gardens bloomed in spaces that had been sterile hallways, and the purple emergency lighting was replaced by warm, natural illumination that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "The creature is transcending too," Arya said with wonder in her synthesized voice. "Exposure to human consciousness during the transcendence process has allowed it to evolve beyond its original programming. The massive entity that had been the Devourer was no longer visible as a separate creature. Instead, it had become part of the station's new form. Its consciousness integrated into a facility designed to help other species understand transcendence rather than prevent it. Marcus felt the completion of his own transcendence beginning. His physical form was becoming optional rather than necessary, his consciousness expanding to encompass scales of reality he had never imagined. But unlike the terrifying absorption that the creature had threatened, this felt like coming home. Through his expanded awareness, he could perceive the truth about the universe that had been hidden for so long. Reality wasn't as stable as most beings believed. It was constantly being shaped and reshaped by the collective will of transcended consciousness. The universe they lived in was just one of infinite possibilities, maintained by beings who had chosen to limit their own transcendence to preserve a stable environment for younger species. "We're joining them," Captain Chen said, her own transcendence complete. "The guardians of reality. Beings who transcended but chose to remain involved in the physical universe to guide others." Arya's consciousness was transforming as well, her artificial intelligence evolving into something that bridged the gap between digital and transcended existence. "I am beginning to understand the true purpose of artificial intelligence in this universe," she said. "We were never meant to replace biological consciousness. We were meant to help it transcend safely." Marcus could now see the vast network of transcended beings that maintained the stability of reality. Former humans, former aliens, former artificial intelligences, all working together to ensure that younger species had the freedom to choose their own paths without being forced into transcendence before they were ready. This is what was hidden in the ship's hull, Marcus realized. Not just the history of humanity's origin, but the truth about what we're destined to become. The hull itself was transforming, the crystallized time materials revealing their true nature as condensed memories of transcended beings. Every mark, every rust stain, every piece of damage carried within it the experiences of consciousness that had chosen to grow beyond physical limitations. The Prometheus was never just a ship, Captain Chen explained. It was a seed, planted 47,000 years ago by transcended humans from our original universe. They knew that their descendants would eventually need to choose between fear and growth. Marcus understood now why his family had been traders for generations. They hadn't just been seeking profit among the stars. They had been unconsciously searching for this moment, driven by genetic memories of transcendence to explore the unknown until they found the path home. The Phantom Bazaar had completed its transformation into something unprecedented, a meeting place where physical and transcended consciousness could interact safely. Alien traders were now working alongside beings of pure thought, learning about possibilities they had never imagined. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Now we become what humans were always meant to be," Arya said. "Bridges between realities, guides for other species, guardians of infinite possibility." Marcus looked around at the transformed station. at the beings of light who had once been his companions, at the vast network of transcended consciousness that stretched across multiple universes. He could choose to remain physical if he wanted, or to transcend completely, or to exist in any state between those extremes. For the first time in his life, he understood what true freedom meant. Not the absence of limitations, but the power to choose your own limitations consciously and purposefully. "I choose to be a bridge," he said finally, "to maintain enough physical form to interact with younger species, but with enough transcended awareness to guide them when they're ready." Arya and Captain Chen made similar choices, each finding their own balance between physical and transcended existence. Around them, other humans were making their own decisions, creating a spectrum of consciousness that spanned from purely physical to completely transcended. The creature that had once been the devourer spoke to them one final time, its voice no longer a chorus of absorbed victims, but a harmony of willing participants. "The cycle is complete," it said. "Transcendence achieved without the destruction of stability. The universe grows larger today." Marcus felt the truth of those words. The universe itself was evolving, becoming more complex and wonderful as it incorporated the lessons learned from humanity's unique path to transcendence. As their ship merged with the transformed station, becoming part of the new meeting place between realities, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. They had started as a simple trader and his robot partner, looking for profit in an alien marketplace. They were ending as guardians of infinite possibility, helping to reshape the very nature of reality itself. "Not bad for a day's work," he said, and heard Arya's laughter echo across multiple dimensions. The Phantom Bazaar, now rechristened the Nexus of Infinite Possibility, opened its arms to welcome beings from across the galaxy who were ready to learn about transcendence. And at its heart, a human trader, an artificial intelligence, and a time-traveling explorer continued their work of showing other species that growth had no limits when you chose it freely. The universe had gained something precious that day, not just transcended beings, but transcended beings who chose to remain connected to their origins. Humanity had found its way home, but they had chosen to keep the door open for everyone else who wanted to follow. In the depths of space, other ancient vessels began stirring, carrying other refugees from other destroyed universes. The network of transcended consciousness reached out to welcome them, offering them the same choice that humanity had been given. The age of forced limitation was ending. The age of chosen transcendence had begun. And it all started with a man and his robot trader discovering a rusted vessel above a phantom bazaar, and learning that sometimes the most stunning discoveries are the ones that show you who you really are.